I had said never to love again. I'm never falling in love. I'm never opening my heart up. It's not worth the pain. I've heard people say things like, there's all those sayings about love. Love is worth the pain of breakup. No, it's not. No, it is not. They lied to you. Okay, that is bullshit. That is not true. It is horrific that when you are deeply connected to someone and it ends, it is awful pain. And that pain lasted through jail. I had very hard things happen in jail, nothing compared to that breakup. And so when I started dating this woman, I could feel my heart expanding, and it scared the hell out of me.
Welcome back to the Infinite Life podcast with me, your host, Katish Haberfield. And we are in the season of love. We have our returning guest, Rahul. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. I'm very excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about love.
I know. We talked about this at the end of the last podcast that we did together, which was back in season 13. You were the first guest on season 13. And I'll just read your bio, because what I want you to do, if you're listening to this and you're like, who's Rahul? Well, I want you to go back and listen to season 13, episode 1, because whilst it's not compulsory viewing or listening, it does set the framework for why we wanted to have this discussion today. So I'll read Rahul's bio. Rahul is a Stanford law graduate turned tech entrepreneur. He sold his first company to Google for $10 million, only to lose it all and his law license through an unexpected journey that led him through the depths of addiction and running an illegal enterprise. After achieving sobriety, he made the courageous decision to turn himself into the FBI, resulting in federal prison time and the complete seizure of his assets by state and federal authorities. Now, 9 years sober, I suppose it's 10 years now. Almost 10. He's not only built his wealth in less than 5 years, but created a life purpose and freedom, splitting his time between Mexico and Greece while working just 5 hours a day. As the founder of the Prison Poetry Project and Prison Education Program, he's dedicated to helping inmates find sobriety through education, turning his own experience into a catalyst for change. His story is testament to the power of transformation, proving that our darkest chapters can become our greatest source of impact. And so we covered a lot in that episode. We covered a lot of amazing poetry. Some of my friends and I still talk about your Mongolian beef poem. And we talked about a near-death experience. We talked about how you got into helping the inmates. And most importantly, at the start of the episode and at the end of the episode, we talked about two things that happened to you in terms of love. You taught us about how just before you went to prison, you had a relationship breakdown. Then at the end of the episode, you mentioned to us that you found love again. And I was like, now that's a man I want to talk more to, because how do you get from probably feeling your worst ever? You've just died, gone to the light, come back down. You've probably been very sick in prison after that for a while. You've had to then look at self-love. Who am I? Who is Rahul now?
Yeah.
And then you have to be brave enough to say, I need love in my life. I want love. And I'm going to go out on an adventure and find it. So let's start the story again of where you found yourself in terms of being able to recreate Rahul so that you could love yourself, and then take us on the adventure for there, I think, unless you want to do it some other way.
It's a fun story, interesting story. So when I got out of prison, I'd been in prison for 18 months, and what I really wanted was sex. That's what I wanted. I mean, blunt. Yeah. And so Tinder became my best friend.
Okay.
And after doing that and getting what I wanted, I realized that the more I did it, the more empty I got and the worse I felt. And I didn't like who I was becoming, right? So I got rid of Tinder. Tinder's no longer my friend. And I just started spending a lot more time meditating. I've always been a meditator. I've always believed in meditation. I've gone through many roads. The road that I have found myself to be on the last 9 months or so, I think really after that last podcast, was someone recommended I check out Sadhguru. And so I did. And I've now done his programs, and I meditate in this specific way twice a day. And it's done a lot to help me grow. Now, I met, so let's go back to 5 years ago when and so I started meditating a lot, 1-2 hours a day, sometimes 3 hours a day. And what I started to see was I just fundamentally didn't like me. I had done all these cool things. I'd helped a lot of people. I'd done this prison poetry project. It was still running. I was helping inmates. But I found that the reason I was doing it, the reason I did it in prison, was because it was a form of protection, right? When all the heads of gangs are a member of your prison poetry project, you're very safe, right? The police don't keep you safe in prison. It's the heads of the gangs that keep you safe. So I was doing it in there for safety. And then when I got out and I kept doing it, I realized after this deep meditation that I was doing it because I liked the attention, right? I liked all the things people were saying about me, and my ego loved it. Every time I would get on this call with heads of prisons or with law enforcement, they were all ecstatic that here's a guy who not only is he not a recidivism statistic, but he's doing something that's helping inmates. And I got this sense of ickiness, right? Like, yeah, you're doing good things. It's kind of like sociopaths who donate millions of dollars. They're sociopaths, but the money's going to good causes. I had that feeling. And I realized that I didn't like it. I kept doing the work, but started looking at where's this self-loathing, this sense of worthlessness come from? And it came from a lot of places, and those places aren't relevant to this conversation, or at all for that matter. Many times people think, oh, I need to know why. You don't really need to know why. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, knowing why is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's there. Deal with it. And I went to my therapist and I said, this is the key. There is a profound self-loathing and self-hatred and worthlessness. What do I do? He said, we can do EMDR. So we did a lot of different types of therapies. And the one that really worked for me was what's called interfamily therapies, IFT, I don't know what it stands for, IFT. All right. That's really what worked. And what happened is I started to break up the shells around what felt like my soul, that said, my soul wanted to open up. And there was this very hard shell around it that started to break. And as it started to break, I could feel this sense of liking myself, right? It started with okay, I'm tolerable. I'm a tolerable human being. And then I got to this place of, I don't need to do any of this stuff, and I'm okay. I don't need to help people. I don't need to do prison poetry. I don't need to be wealthy. I don't need any of that. If I'm homeless on a bench, I'm okay. I'm okay, right? Why? And I started feeling this sense of connection to universal consciousness. The same connection I had when I died and came back. I started feeling that again. Like that connection that shell had been shattered and this connection was reopening. And fast forward, I continue to do all the things I'm doing, but now my intention behind it is very different. My intention now is I want to give this sense of love, this sense of connection, this sense of God, call it what you will, back to the world, because I think the world needs it. And even if the world doesn't need it, I want to give it back. So I started to do it, right? Nothing changed. I don't think anyone who I was working with noticed anything different, but I noticed something different. I was different. I was fundamentally different than I was a week ago or a month ago or a year ago. And it was also during that time I decided to leave the country. And part of the reason I decided to leave the country is, as a convicted felon, it's just not a comfortable place to live, right? When you're living in the US. And I was convicted of some very serious charges. And I was working with very unfriendly people, right? So whenever you get pulled over, and nowadays with technology, I'm sure it's the case all over the world, all the developed countries have it. All cops have to do is they have their cameras on their cruisers. They scan license plates automatically. And mine is flagged with 30 things pop up, and I get pulled over. And since I had contacts in the jail system and law enforcement, no one ever harassed me, but it was just uncomfortable. So I decided I'm going to do a road trip or a traveling trip, not a road trip, all the way south to Chile. I got to Mexico, and then somebody said, "Hey, you should go on some dates." And I was like, "I don't want to go on any dates." And a friend of mine said, "Just go on a couple of dates." And so I said, "Fine, I will, but I'm not getting online. I'm not doing Tinder. I'll go on dates. If the universe happens to put someone in my path, I'll go on a date." And so one morning, I'm in a coffee shop, and I see this table of beautiful women, right? And I'm like, I'm going to get some numbers today. And so I literally walk up to them, and I said, "Hey, I'm American," in Spanish. I said, "I'm an American, and I'm practicing my Spanish. Can I sit with you ladies?" And so I sit with them, and I start talking, and about 10 minutes in, they're like, "Your Spanish is pretty good. You're not practicing your Spanish." I said, "No, I just want to sit with a group of 5 very attractive women." I'm like, "Who's here? Who's single here?" And they were like, "You are uncle people." And so I was like, "Who's single? Which of you are single?" And they were like, so they pointed out like who was married, and then there were these 2 single women. And so I asked both of them for their phone numbers, and both were like, "No, I'm not giving you our phone numbers. First of all, you came into this conversation on deception. Your Spanish is great." They're like, "Yeah, it needs some help, but it's not bad. And you didn't want our numbers because of us. You wanted anyone's number, right?" So I walked away that day with no numbers. And then I just kept living my life, not thinking anything of it. It was a fun experience. I do things like that all the time, and I enjoy it. And so, I don't know, a couple of days later, one of the women I saw at a grocery store, and I went and said hi to her, and we chatted, and I said, "Can I have your number now?" And she was like, "Nope." And we moved on. Now, Mazatlan is a city of 350,000 people. Where she lived, I didn't know this at the time, but where she lived and where I lived were considerably different. We should never run into each other ever again. And I didn't live close to that coffee shop, nor did she. She happened to be there. I happened to be there. And so about a month after that, when I'm looking at moving from now continuing my journey south to Chiapas, Mexico, and then to Guatemala, I see her again at a restaurant with her kids. And she sees me, and I approached her when her kids had gone. I said, "Listen, we've seen each other now 3 times, twice randomly outside of any official meeting. Can I just take you to dinner? I don't even need your number. Can we just meet at a restaurant? I take you to dinner, we eat, you go." And she was like, "Fine." And so we went to dinner. We had a blast. She was like, "Your Spanish is actually much worse than I thought it was originally. Your Spanish sucks. You need a lot of help. Let's start taking classes or do something." And at the end of that date, I said, "Can we go to another date? I don't need your number." And so we went on 5 dates. I never had her number. And the end of the 5th date, she said, "Okay, you can have my number now." She gave me her phone number. And that was not my plan. It wasn't my intention. My intention was to go to Chile and see all of South America. And I work from a computer. I work from a really small, tiny computer, and I work a few hours a day, and that's great. And so the thing that started happening was my heart, which after that really hard breakup, what was now 4 or 5 years ago, I had said never to love again. I'm never falling in love. I'm never opening my heart up. It's not worth the pain. I've heard people say things like, there's all those sayings about love. Love is worth the pain of breakup. No, it's not. No, it is not. They lied to you. Okay, that is bullshit. That is not true. It is horrific that when you are deeply connected to someone and it ends, It is awful pain. And that pain lasted through jail. I had very hard things happen in jail, nothing compared to that breakup. And so when I started dating this woman, I could feel my heart expanding and it scared the hell out of me. And I pulled back. And so in the process of us dating, there were 2 or 3 times where I wanted to break up with her. And I didn't, because I have good mentors and good friends who said, just stay. Just everything's working. Just stay. And I had all the excuses why this is a bad idea, why I shouldn't stay, why I can't stay, why I need to run. And I remember a good friend of mine, Eric, he said, listen, do you want to spend your life running? Do you really want to spend your life running? I understand why you're leaving the US, but you are running from the US. Let's be very clear about that. You are running. Do you want to continue doing this in all areas of your life? Because if you do, just accept it that I, Rahul, am going to be someone who runs. I'm going to run from love. I'm going to run from whatever, but just accept it and be at peace with who you are. You're a runner. And I got to tell you that I didn't like the conversation. I was really pissed off at him. I wanted to say a lot of things. I love and respect this guy. And so I kept my mouth shut. And I stayed. I kept dating this woman and kept dating her. And then I got to know her kids. And I never thought I'd be a dad. I always thought I'm too selfish to be a dad. I only care about me. And I found myself falling in love with these kids. It's been 5 years now since Lucera's been in my life and these kids have been in my life. And to me, they're my kids. They're my kids. And I just didn't think it was possible. I don't think it was possible for me. I thought I was not that person, right? There are those people, and I wasn't one of them. And they've never said, my son has said many times, to me, you're my dad. My real biological dad's not my dad. He said, but I just don't feel comfortable calling you dad. So he calls me Rahul. And my daughter is not very vocal, sentimentally vocal, but she calls me Papu or Bob, which those are great, right? Those are great for me, Papu or Bob. And when I first started dating her mom, they did not like me at all, right? The first guy after divorce, they wanted nothing to do with me. My daughter would go out of her way to throw me under the bus at every opportunity she got. And I remember not being angry and not being upset and not wanting to retaliate, but feeling a sense of sadness and empathy for her. And how hard must it be for this little girl to see this new person in her mom's life and to know that her mom and her dad were never getting back together, that it was never going to happen. You know, I was that nail in the coffin and I got all that rage, right? And then she started going to therapy, thank God. And now the relationship I have with my kids is profoundly deep, right? My son left for college a few months ago, and it's been hard on my wife, but it's also been very hard on me. Him and I did jujitsu together. We would go surfing, and if anyone saw us surfing, you'd be like, that's not surfing. That's two dudes sitting on surfboards talking. Maybe we caught one wave or two max. He's an athlete. He can catch lots of waves. I just didn't catch any waves because I can't. I'm just that bad. But we would just talk about life, about love, about dating. He now has a girlfriend who is also in the city that he went to college. And they're one's at one university, the other's at another. And so we still talk, right? What I do for a living is I'm a trader. And I taught my son how to trade. So now you have an 18-year-old kid who's probably earning more than most Americans earn. And we still trade at 4 a.m. Pacific, 5 a.m. Central Time. And we still talk. It's just different though. We did this in person, now it's different. And I miss him. I just miss that kid so much. My daughter is 13 going on 20. But she's a good kid, right? She's a good, smart kid. And I just never thought this would be my life. And now it is. And I love my life. I love it. And my relationship with my wife has been I have a good relationship with my wife, but there's times where I find myself deeply in love with her and I hate her at the same time. And I think what I've realized is the more I open my heart, the better it gets. The more I open my heart, the more it softens, whatever the situation is. And it might not soften. You might be in the middle watching an argument and think, there is no soft heart anywhere in this. But the more I open that heart, the less anger I have, right? The more I open my heart, and it is not an easy process. People always ask, how do you open your heart? I know that's a good question. But the way I have found that I open my heart is my meditation and my journaling. Every day I meditate. I try to journal every day. It happens like 3 days a week. But the more I meditate and the more I journal, the more I'm able to open up. And when I journal, what do I write? I just put all the crap on paper, right? Everything that frustrates me or annoys me, or I just put it all on paper. And I normally fill up 3 pages of crap. And then I never read it again, right? I just turn the page and it's between the paper and God, and I never read it again. But I'm able to let go of all this stuff, right? This stuff that's not serving me, that's hurting me. And a lot of the stuff that's not serving me is ego. Ego is brutal. My ego wants to say to her, don't you know who I am? And the real answer to that question is, I'm just another bonzo on the bus. I'm just another human being trying to get through life, doing the best he can. That is who I am. I'm no better or worse than anybody else, right? And it's been a nice experience. The language barriers early on were tough. It's hard, right? I think my English is very good. I have legal English, but I don't have the same fluidity in Spanish. And so it's much harder to express concepts. Now, if you hear me talk to a group of people, everyone says, hey, your Spanish is excellent, right? You've only known for 4 or 5 years. You speak like you've been speaking for many years. Yeah, that's great. But in a marriage, you need a different set of language. And I don't have it yet. And my wife doesn't speak English. And my wife made it very clear, you're in my country, you speak my language. I was like, did you support the guy with the red hat? Anyways, so it's been a very interesting ride, and one that I am really grateful for, and that seems to be growing every day. Like this love seems to be growing every day. If I'll give you a recent example, very strange thing. I don't like doing dishes. We have a house cleaner that comes every day for a reason, right? My wife was like, do we need someone every day? I'm like, yes, we do. Dishes are the reason. But Saturday and Sunday, she doesn't come. And yesterday, the kitchen was a disaster. My wife is an amazing cook. She has never been to India. She got 1 crash course in Indian cooking from my mom, and she's never read an Indian cookbook. And she makes the best Indian food I've ever had. It's phenomenal, hands down the best Indian food I've ever had. And so she started an Indian food catering business, which has been exploding, right? So our kitchen was a disaster yesterday. And I don't know why I did, but I cleaned the kitchen, I swept, I mopped, I did all the dishes. So when she came home to this beautiful, clean kitchen. And at no point was I thinking, I'm going to do this so I can get something, and I'm going to do this so that she pats me on the back. I did it because I wanted to do it. I want to do it for her. I would never have done that before. I would have said, hey, the dishes can stay until the person comes tomorrow to clean the house. And so that's new. That's new behavior. The only thing I can think of why I'm doing this now is my heart is opening more and more to my wife.
Okay, wow. So many things to talk about from that alone. I have a couple of things that I just want to stop, and it's a long way back. But so some of the people that are listening to this will be listening because they're already married and they just want to know somebody else's perspective about love within a marriage, and we've got some great bites there. And some people are single and they're not open to love, but they happen to listen to my podcast. And some people are in a new relationship, and some people are just like healing from a previous relationship. And one of the comments that I wanted to take them back to was that first awareness that, where you are like on Tinder and you are out there because you have a physical urge that you need to satiate until it becomes not the urge anymore. And what I noticed in my own dating history over the last 13 years is that I've only been on Tinder once in my entire time, but over the various dating apps, right, you can go on and you can come back off and you can turn back on and it's the same faces. And you're like, oh, this person is still doing the same thing. They're just out for it for the physical sensation that they need. And I was just wondering if so for me, it's, you might not see it as a big thing, but I think it's also a very big thing for either a man or a woman to go, okay, actually, that's pretty empty. And I remember myself going, yeah, no, when I was in my 20s and 30s, teens, 20s and up to 30, I was married at 30, but it was fun to go out to bars and to drink and to find a nice person and off you go. But it became very empty. It was like this meaningless transaction, but it actually does take an awareness to even get to that stage and say there's more to life than just that. Do you have any reflections on, for somebody who is in that, a lot of people in post marriage breakups, they're just like, I had a really bad sex life in my marriage, I didn't get what I wanted, he made me do this or she made me do this, and now I'm just going to have it my way and I'm going to do it when I want to, and it's okay for me to be selfish. Do you have any sort of comments for them about that awareness piece where you can get to the piece where it's like, sure, that's all right, that's fine, but is it serving you? How do you help people, or how can people help themselves to get to the, is this transactional based thing that I'm doing serving me?
So I'll tell you what, I can tell folks what got me there, right? And so what got me there is, as I was doing my meditations, literally one day after meditating, opened my phone, and I literally felt a sense of sickness. I felt gross is what it was. I just felt gross. I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this anymore. And I deleted the app and I didn't look back. And the other thing that was very interesting was some of the partners that I had, I was still hooking up with some of them. And I thought, maybe I can still do that. I know them and there's a connection there. And so I still remember it, the exact, normally my process was we go to dinner and then we go back to my place or her place. That was the normal. And so we go to dinner and I had this great dinner and we talked about things that we'd never talked about before. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be okay here. It's going to be fine. I'm going to go get laid. It's going to be awesome. And then it came to the part of going back to her place. And Katish, I just felt gross. I said, can we maybe just go on another date before we do this again? And it wasn't what she wanted. What she wanted was just the physical. I think the dinners were something that made us both feel less bad about what we were doing, right? Yep. But she was like, no, that's not what we do. What we do is go to dinner, we have sex. That's what we do. She's like, I'm not looking for anything more. And so what I said to her I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. I really like you. You're a cool person. And I'd like to have dinner again. She's like, I'm not looking for a friend. I have a lot of friends. I'm looking for this. Works. And so I'm really grateful for her because she had the wherewithal to say, no, I know what I want and this is what I want. And okay, you don't fit anymore. And that was a blessing for me. That whole experience was a blessing. And the other thing that was really interesting was I didn't feel the sense of rejection, right? Mm-hmm. So I think underneath all of this is one needs to be at peace with who they are. Mm. I think that's the basis, the foundation of this is if I'm not at peace with who I am, if I'm not comfortable in my own skin and okay with who Rahul is, I think what would have happened is I would have looked at that as this profound rejection, and I would have spiraled, but definitely would have taken it as rejection. And instead of taking it as rejection, I said, the situation's changed, and now the situation that is not what this person wants. It has nothing to do with me. It just, the situation is not what this person is looking for. And we were able to go our separate ways. So I think if I were to give someone feedback, I would say, first, know who you are. Really know who you are. Get to know you. Take a little bit of time and know who you are, right? Who you, John, Kelly, whatever your name is, know who you are. Like I got to know who I was. And once I knew who I was, I knew that this was not the path I wanted to be on.
Interesting. And the second part is when you did leave America and you were there in that cafe and you walked up to those women. First of all, I know you said they said it was being deceptive, but also there's part of me that wanted to applaud you because, hello, this is 2025, 2026 when you're listening to this, and people don't do that. Like, people just so busy in their phones, they use apps for dating, and like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s in terms of the prime of my dating years, and you just walked up to somebody and said, hey, you're cute. You want a drink? You want to buy me a drink? Or there were cues and behavior. And one of the things that I've noticed is that it's almost illegal to do that anymore. Thou must not look at somebody in a queue. Thou must not think that somebody looks cute. One must assume that everybody is always taken, and you can't walk up to anybody and say, hey, are you single? So I just thought that was really interesting because, you know, what if you don't want to date via apps? It's okay, all right, maybe my friends will introduce me to someone. And I remember in my own personal experience, people have said to me, I don't have anybody that I would recommend for you, Katish. They're like, they're my great friends, but your partner? No, stay as far away as you can, away from them. No, I don't recommend them. And I was like, okay, good. And I don't want to do that app thing anymore. So I guess I'll meet somebody in real life.
So I think that's also a cultural thing, because in Western cultures, or in developed nations, if you will, that's like the culture has gotten, I don't know how to describe it. Cultures have gotten like that, where it's just not common. For example, Latin cultures are just warmer cultures, or warmer people, right? Like in the US, if you're in New York, or forget New York, if you're in Florida and you say good morning or good afternoon to random people, you're going to get weird looks, like really weird looks. Like, why are you saying good morning to me? I don't know you. In Mexico, you say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. It's just what you do. In Mexico, if you're walking by somebody's table as they're eating, you say provecho, and it means enjoy, like deeply enjoy your meal. And if you don't say it, it's rude, right? Okay. So it's just a different culture. And what I've been finding as I've traveled throughout the world is cultures that are less held by technology are more human. They're more open to human connection. They're more open to talking to strangers. It's common in Mexico that people in line will just talk to each other. Imagine in the US or in Australia or New Zealand, people talking to somebody in an elevator. Oh my God, that's crazy. Who would do that?
Pretend they're not there. Pretend they're not there.
Yeah. Pretend no one's there. You're in the elevator alone. You're in your little box alone. And to me, that's just a crappy way to live life, right? That's not a way that I wanted to live life. And the thing is, I didn't even realize I didn't want to live life that way until I got here. It was one of these, I didn't know what I didn't know. And then when I got here, I realized, wow, this is a very open culture. These are people that genuinely care. And so it's been fun, right? And now I'll go out with my wife and we'll just start talking to strangers on the street at the beach. And we have great conversations about their dogs or whatever. And then we move on. And there's a human connectedness that I find here that I don't find in developed nations.
Yeah, interesting point. And I agree with you. I grew up, part of my life was in Papua New Guinea, and walking along Ella Beach, everybody said good morning to everybody.
Yeah.
And then I lived in country Australia, and when you're driving, you raise your finger and you say hello, basically, to the next person that's driving the other way. The opposite way, you're like, morning, morning. And my kids have often said, because their dad lives in the country still, they're like, why don't people in Brisbane raise their finger? And I'm like, because they're city slickers. They've never lived in the country. They don't know that. It's just, they weren't brought up with that. You've got a benefit of a country dad and a mum who's a city slicker but has lived in the country. To raise your finger and say thank you when somebody lets you in, and not to toot the horn unless it's life-saving.
It's like a great, they must have really done something for the horn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to. It is interesting, and I think we do get frightened to talk to people, but it's a basic human fundamental skill, isn't it? It is relearning the art of conversing, just basic, simple stuff.
And I'm seeing it, what I like that my kids see with me is they see that I'm not afraid to talk to anybody about anything. And I think in these generations, like my son who's 18, my daughter is 13, they're losing those skills rapidly. Like something my friends who have kids their age say, and they're in shock that my daughter, she has no social media access and her phone doesn't connect the internet. She can play Roblox on her computer with her brother, and that's it. And people are like, are you nuts? That's crazy. No, she's actually a far more social human being than probably you are. Because why? Social media is not social. It should be called anti-social media. That's because that's really what it is. It was social maybe for 2 years when Facebook first came out, and then it turned into what it's turned into today. I think parenting, or what I've learned about parenting is when I'm pouring myself into my kids and I'm doing it, and sometimes I'm a disciplinarian, sometimes I'm very loving, but it all comes from a place of I want them to have a better life than I. And I love them very much, and I want them to be able to go into this world and succeed. Like my daughter, I put my daughter in financial education and trading school this year, school that I created. And I put my son in that school when I got married to my wife, and they hated it. My kids, they hate this. Why do we need to know this? I'm 13. This is stupid. Yeah, I'm like, I don't care. Class is every day for an hour. And they're like, every day, I have stuff to do. I don't care. It's every day for an hour. There's no way out of this. Even if you're dying and sick, you're sitting in class. What's the benefit? My son is now earning close to $100,000 a year. He's 18 and in college. My daughter has started trading this month. She started taking trades. She's earning. I don't tell my kids they're trading real money because it screws with their psychology, but they're trading real money live accounts. And I'm doing that. Why? Because so that I know that when I go, that they have skills that will serve them. Even if the economy changes, even if markets change, even if AI takes over the world, they have social skills, they have financial skills, they have emotional skills, they have skills that will serve them. And that is coming from a place of caring and a profound sense of love. And what I realize as I'm saying this is underneath this sense of being a protector of my family, it's not a physical, there's no lions out there. No lion's gonna come to the door. But underneath that is I love my family deeply, and I want them to do the best that they can and have the skills that they need in this world that we go into, or that they go into.
And so still heaps of questions, but in respect to your kids, it is a very difficult thing to walk into a relationship where there are children, right? A lot of people will just say, no, thank you. I'd like somebody who has grown-up kids. They're already left home. That's easier for me. I don't want the baggage, which is fine. But they're also missing out on something, right? They're missing out on developing new relationships. And by the sounds of it and the way that you express yourself, it's part of the cracking open experience is to learn to love somebody else's children as though they're your own. And I think also for a woman who can see that the man is not judging her for the way she brought up her kids or her ex-husband or anything. It's just they're learning to love the children. It also cracks open her heart in a different way because the children are a product of her, and she's going to be the fierce lioness protecting them. So how do you see that you were able to navigate that part of the relationship by there's these rules that say only the birth parent can discipline or get mad at the child in the new relationship? Like, how did you navigate all of the complexities of I'm trying to date the woman?
Yeah. I think those are dumb rules. Whoever wrote those rules is a moron. Someone should tell them that. I'll tell them. Find me the person, I'll tell them they're an idiot. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I did it well. I don't know if I did it poorly. I just did what I thought was right. It is really what it came down to. I did what I thought was the right thing to do. And what was the right thing to do is to treat these kids as they were my kids and to give them love and to support them and to walk with them through life's challenges. And I think what I learned in this process is that as long as I treated my kids with respect and dignity and explained why I was taking the actions that I was taking. For example, we have a rule in the house that like the kids have chores my son now lives alone, so he doesn't have the chores, but everyone had to do the dishes during the day because when the person who cleans the house left, it was like 3 p.m. There's still dishes. And my wife does all the cooking. So the kids had to clean and they had to sweep and they had to do all this stuff, right? And if they didn't do it, there were consequences. And we talked about the consequences as a family before. Like I never put consequences on the kids. I just said, okay, what's a fair consequence for you not doing the dishes? And they were like, I don't know. What fine us. And I'm like, fining you doesn't serve anyone because you have an allowance. And so I'm fighting myself. That's not like what's going to hurt enough, but not too much that you are going to not ever do that again. Like one punishment should be harsh enough that you're never going to do it again. And so we talked about it. And so what we came to was my son lost his phone until the next time he had to clean the dishes. Right now, for an 18-year-old kid to lose his phone, or at the time he was a 15-year-old kid to lose his phone for 2 days was a very harsh consequence. And he missed his dishes once, and I took the phone, and he was pissed. And I have a project at school, and I said, okay, where's the students? And I said, give me all the numbers. So I'm holding the phone and look, get the numbers, and I texted all of them. Axel didn't do his chores. He's losing his phone. And I sent a message to the professor. If he needs his phone, he doesn't have it. I'm sorry, he doesn't get it back for 2 days. So the embarrassment of getting that message from his friends, the embarrassment of the teacher. And by the way, this was all discussed before. So though he was angry, he knew what the consequence was. Never again did that kid forget to do his dishes. Never. And for my daughter, it was her dog. She loves her dog. I said, you don't get to pet your dog for 2 days. And your dog gets to, our dogs are very loved. So I'll walk her, I'll feed her, she'll sleep in our room. 2 days. One time it happened, and she cried for probably 48 hours, my daughter. But has she ever forgotten to do her dishes? No. And they were consequences that were discussed and agreed to. And the other thing I did was I made my kids sign a contract. So we wrote a contract for the dishes and the other chores. I understand then we wrote what specifically was required of them, right? So at 15 and 10, 10-year-old, 15-year-old sign a contract. And people are like, why would you make a 10-year-old and 15-year-old do this? This is the world we live in, right? This is how the world works. It's better to start teaching these lessons young, so that when they're 19 or 20 in the real world, they understand that there are rules of engagement to live in this world, and there are consequences. Sometimes they're good consequences, sometimes they're bad consequences, right? We created something else that we did. My kids earned money by doing chores in the house. And if they saved a certain percent every month, they would get a bonus and a gift, right? And at the end of every quarter, I'd say, let me see your savings. And so at the end of the first quarter, neither of them saved. And I said, all right, well, this was going to be the bonus and this was going to be the gift. And the gift was a free vacation to anywhere they wanted to go. I had bought the tickets, and they were, please, can we go? No, sorry. Savings was save 35%. Sorry, I mean, your mom and I are now going to go skiing in Tahoe. So you guys are going to stay here. Your grandmother's going to come and watch you, and your mom and I are going to go skiing in Tahoe. And they were livid. But did they ever not save 35% again? No. And it's not about punishment. It's never been about punishment, and it should never be about punishment. For me, it's about teaching my kids a foundation for living that is going to serve them for the rest of their lives.
And I can hear that in the example. Thank you for sharing that. And can you, because we've got about 10 minutes left, and I could talk to you for hours, but it's my son's birthday today, so I want to wake him up and give him a birthday present. But
happy birthday to your son.
Thank you. One of the things that, pick one of these concepts. Can you explain to me either how you created boundaries with your wife to make sure that your relationship thrived, or how did you see the difference in the transformation of how your wife felt about herself from being single and raising two kids to being in the relationship with you where she feels, I'm assuming, protected and loved and nourished?
Those are both are very good topics. I think I'll go to the second one, and it'll probably have flavors of the first. Can you ask that second one again?
Yes. So my stereotype, and probably my own experience, is a single mum with kids tends to do everything for them, or doesn't necessarily. She's not necessarily her best because she's run down, she's tired, she's busy, has all her own monsters in her head. And as much as we say that we're better alone, we are built for connection. So what transformation have you seen in your wife from being the single mum to being in this family unit and being loved by you? What have you seen the difference?
This is great question. So when we started dating, when we were dating, it was one dynamic. When we got married, that dynamic changed drastically. And what I found is she really coddled her kids, obviously. And that she gave them whatever they wanted. And then when I came in the picture, I gave input. No, they don't get to do those things. Yeah, but they've always done them. I said, but they don't get to do them anymore. And before we got married, we talked about a lot of these things. I think that's key. If you're going to marry somebody with kids, establish boundaries before the marriage. Don't get married and say, now let's establish some boundaries. That is a terrible way to go. Don't do that. We establish boundaries before. We establish what's my role going to be as a husband, what's her role going to be as a wife, we established a lot of those dynamics. And there were things that she didn't like, right? I said, honey, the way that the kids need to be raised is they need to have a financial education. We need to save at least 30% of our income. We need to do these things. And she's like, yeah, but you make X, and if we save X, then they're not going to get the lifestyle that I want. Like the lifestyle I was living as a single guy making, say, $200,000 a year. I didn't double my income when I got married. I still make the same amount of money. But I have always saved 30% of my income. I just put it into long-term investments, and it just sits there and grows. And so she was used to seeing me having this lifestyle where I would say, okay, let's go fly to Cuba. And so that was really hard, I think, for her to realize, oh, all of this is going to change, right? What I'm seeing and experiencing is not going to be the same. But we established all those things before. We established education for the kids. We talked about what would discipline look like? What's my role in discipline? We established all of that. And then I think what was the most important for her was to see that what I said was what I did. That was the crux. Okay, he said all these things, but are those empty words, or is this the truth? And so then I just did what I said. And because I have learned over the years of not to overpromise, I way under promised, so that when I delivered, it was way over delivering. right? And I think that takes, now some people would say that's manipulation. I think that's managing the life that you're about to step into. When you're marrying somebody that has 2 kids or has any kids, you're about to step into a major life change. And if you don't plan it ahead of time and manage it properly, you're going to fail. And so and failure is not like failing in a business or failing in a job. Failures are going to profoundly negatively impact the life of these 2 human beings. And that's not something that I'm ready to fail in. I will make mistakes along the way, but fail, that's not something I'm willing to do. So I planned how I was going to enter this marriage, and then I entered it that way. And it's worked out. Yeah, we have our fights. Yeah, we have our disagreements. Yeah, things don't work, but it's okay. That's part of living.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm like, do you want to start a marriage school as well? Because like, seriously, how many people get married without any of those discussions? A very large number of people.
Large number of people.
Especially second
This
marriages.
is my
right?
second marriage, so I learned from the first.
Yeah, but still, especially in second marriages, that's why there becomes third marriages and fourth marriages, and there's somebody 70 and they're still doing the dating thing because it's like they didn't get it right 5 times in a row or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's an important concept.
You know, I think what I learned about myself is if I wouldn't have gone deep and found that I first needed to love Rahul, I would have been doing that. I would have done 6-month relationships until I was dead.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay. And that kind of brings us full circle, because that's where you have to start, is with yourself. So there is so much there that I think people can actually sit down and reflect on. Wherever you are in that stage of, in your stage of life, there's something there that you can just take away and journal on or think out loud with a cup of tea or whatever about, how can I see myself in Rahul? How am I different? And what is there for me to take away and implement? And what is there for me to discard? Because our lives are all different. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, thank you so much for
Thanks
just
for
being
having me. This
so
was fun.
open about your journey. Thank you, Rahul, for a second
Thank you.
time. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very
And we
much.
wish you all the very best with all of your endeavors and love and life.
Thank you. This was fun.